The forgotten Windowth village was quiet that morning. Birds whispered in the trees, and a soft mist clung to the worn stone walls of the little houses. The streets hadn't changed much in 20 years. The cobbled paths still curved the same way. The bakery still opened at 7, and the house at the very edge of town still had its shutters closed tight. No one had seen her in over a decade. They used to whisper her name like a ghost story. Ana de Armas, the girl who left and never came back. The girl who became something far bigger than this town could understand. She had once played in the fields just past the bakery. She had once walked barefoot through the rain, laughing as thunder rolled overhead. But when the fame came, she vanished. Not even her parents knew where she'd gone. Then her parents passed, quietly, years apart. The house remained closed until now. A dusty black motorcycle rolled into the village, engine humming low like it was afraid to disturb the silence. The man riding it wore no helmet. Just a black jacket, a backpack, and eyes that held too much weight. He parked outside the old house and stared at it for a long time, as if waiting for the past to unlock the front door itself. It was Keanu Reeves. No one had expected him. No one had prepared. The villagers peeked from behind curtains, recognizing the face instantly, but unsure why he was here, of all places. He didn't speak to anyone. He didn't knock. He just walked to the window, the one on the left side of the house, the one Anna had once climbed out of as a child to chase fireflies, and he stood there. There was no car in the driveway, no movement inside, yet Keanu waited. Minutes turned to an hour. Still, he waited. A little girl across the street finally walked up to him. Her name was Isabella. She had no idea who he was, only that he looked sad and kind at the same time. She asked, "Are you waiting for someone?" Keanu knelt down and smiled softly. "Yes," he said. "I'm waiting for someone who forgot this place." Isabella frowned. Why did she forget? Keanu looked at the house, because sometimes the world is too loud, and home becomes a memory you're afraid to break. She didn't fully understand, but she stayed near him anyway. An old woman came out from the next house. Her name was Clara, and she had known Anna since she was a baby. She looked at Keanu with cautious eyes. "You're really him, aren't you?" she asked. Keanu nodded once. "I came to bring her something." Clara shook her head. "Not here. Hasn't been for 15 years. Some say she never will be. Hollywood did things to her heart." Keanu said nothing. Instead, he reached into his backpack and pulled out a small, weathered notebook. The edges were frayed, the pages. Inside were old, fragile, and on the cover, written in faded pencil, were the words, "Things I'll never forget." He handed it to Clara. "She wrote this when she was 10, he said. She left it in a drawer when she moved out. I found it years later in a box she forgot. She gave me." Clara opened the first page. The writing was shaky and young. 1. The smell of Mama's bread. 2. The sound of Papa's laugh. 3. The fireflies near the old stone wall. 4. The window I climbed through when I was scared. Clara's voice cracked as she read. She looked back at Keanu. "Why now? Why after all this time?" Keanu's gaze didn't move from the window, because people think she forgot. They think she turned her back on who she was. The truth is, she's hurting. And people in pain don't always come home. Sometimes they wait for someone to remind them where it is. That night, Keanu didn't leave. He sat by the window, under the stars, reading the notebook to the wind, as if she could hear. The villagers didn't disturb him. They let him be. The next morning, something had changed. The front gate of the house was open. Just slightly. Not wide. Not enough for a stranger to walk in, but enough to say, someone had listened, and Keanu smiled as if he knew that was her. "Answer," he whispered. "I'll wait." And then he sat again by the window, same way she once had, watching the fields, dreaming of something bigger. Only now he wasn't dreaming, was remembering. And he wasn't alone. The letter in the garden the second day was colder. Clouds hovered low, and a light drizzle softened the morning light. Keanu was already awake when the birds began to sing. He hadn't slept much. He had spent the night on the small wooden bench. Beneath the window, his coat wrapped around his shoulders and the notebook resting in his lap, the village still watched. Not with judgment, but with quiet wonder. No one had expected this. It's not the children playing in the puddles, not the old men at the cafe, and certainly not Clara, who brought Keanu a cup of tea with shaky hands. "You're still here," she said softly. "I told you," Keanu replied, his voice calm. "I'll wait." He took the tea and nodded in thanks as the hours passed. He walked around the house, remembering the stories Anna used to tell him. She had spoken of the lemon tree behind the garden wall, the one her father planted when she was 6. It never grew fruit, she had once said, laughing, but it never gave up either. Keanu found it still there, still stubborn, still reaching upward despite its crooked branches. At the base of the tree, half buried beneath a patch of wild grass, something caught his eye. He bent down slowly. A jar, an old glass jar, the kind children use for fireflies or secret notes. The lid was rusted, and the glass was foggy. Inside was a rolled-up paper, yellowed and water-stained. Keanu's heart skipped. He twisted the lid open carefully and pulled out the note. The paper trembled in his hands. "If you're reading this, it means I couldn't come back." "Not yet. But I remember everything. I remember the stars here. I remember the way the floor creaked near Mama's room. I remember the way you believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Keanu, if you found this, thank you for not forgetting me. Thank you for bringing part of me home again. Maybe one day I'll find the strength to return, and if I do, I hope you're still waiting." Keanu sat down on the grass, the letter pressed against his chest. For a long time, he said nothing. His eyes stared at the horizon, and the drizzle fell gently around him. Then, without a word, he folded the note and placed it back into the jar, sealing it again and returning it under the tree. He wasn't here to force her back. He was here to show her that something from her past still remained.
Ow.
That not all doors had been closed, and that someone still remembered the girl she used to be. He went back to the front of the house and sat again by the window. Hours passed. Children came and went, waving at him from across the street. Isabella brought him a small handmade bracelet with purple beads and said, "For luck." He wore it without question. That evening, Clara returned. This time, she brought a faded photo. "I think you should see this," she said. Keanu looked. At the picture was Anna, no older than 10, holding a paintbrush in one hand and smiling wide with a smudge of blue paint on her cheek. Beside her, a wall half-painted with flowers. And beside the wall, a man with long hair crouched down, laughing. It was him. "You were here once before," Clara said. Keanu nodded, "just once." She wanted me to see where her stories came from. "I think she left something else," Clara said. "Come with me." They walked around the house to a shed hidden behind a collapsed fence. Clara pushed open the door, creaked from years of dust and silence. Inside was a small easel. And on that easel, under a dusty cloth, was a painting. Keanu lifted the cloth slowly. The painting showed a girl sitting on the stone wall, looking out at the fields. In the distance, a figure stood beneath the lemon tree, back turned, holding a book in his hand. "She painted this?" he asked. "The day before she left," Clara said. "She said it was what she hoped the future would look like." Keanu touched the corner of the canvas gently. It wasn't just a painting, it was a promise. Later that night, as the rain fell harder, Keanu stayed inside the shed. He lit a candle, placed the painting upright, and began to write something in the notebook Anna once left behind. His words were simple. "You said maybe one day you'd return. Maybe today isn't that day, but this place still remembers. I'll still be here." He left the notebook open. Beside the painting, the window of the house remained closed, but as he stepped outside to return to the bench, something new caught his attention. The curtain behind the window was no longer still. It had moved just slightly, like someone inside had finally pulled it back to look out. The voice behind the curtain. Next morning, the village was different. Not loud, not awake in a new way, just different. Like something long frozen had finally shifted beneath the surface. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray, and the air felt thick with things unsaid. Keanu Reeves stood again in front of the house, his breath visible in the cool morning air. He didn't move toward the door. He didn't knock. Instead, he simply looked up at the window. The curtain moved again. It wasn't a gust of wind this time. It was careful, gentle. And Keanu saw it clearly now, a shadow behind the glass. Someone was watching. Someone who hadn't dared come close the day before. And for the first time since he arrived, Keanu spoke aloud. Not to anyone nearby, but to the air, to the memory, to the house, and maybe to her. You don't have to open the door, he said softly. Not yet. I just want you to know. I'm not leaving. His voice carried, soft but sure. And though the window didn't open, the shadow behind it did not disappear. In the afternoon, Clara returned again. This time, she brought something wrapped in cloth. Double quotes, I think she'd want you to have this, Clara said, placing the bundle gently into his hands. Keanu opened it slowly. Inside was a sweater, knitted small, faded blue. It had belonged to Anna's mother. The initials A.D. were stitched inside the collar. And tucked into the pocket was a photograph of Anna as a teenager, sitting beside her mother. Both of them laughing with eyes closed and sun on their faces. Keanu held the photo for a long moment. Thank you, he whispered. Clara hesitated. Then, she said, there's something you should know. Keanu looked at her. She came back once, Clara said. Only for an hour. A few years ago. Late at night. She didn't tell anyone. She stood by the front door. She cried. Then she left. Keanu's jaw tightened. Why didn't she come in? Because she thought she no longer belonged here. She thought everyone hated her for leaving. She was wrong, but pain doesn't listen to reason. Keanu closed his eyes. That night, the village was quiet again. No one disturbed him. The candle in the shed still burned. The painting still stood. Keanu read from the notebook aloud, not loudly, but clearly enough for someone behind the glass to hear. He read memories. He read hope. He read things she had once written about her dreams, about how the stars over her village were different than anywhere else in the world. Then, after a long silence, he added his own words. I still remember the day you left. I didn't understand it then. Thought you were running away from everything. But now I know you were running toward something too, and it cost you more than you showed. The curtain moved again, but this time something else happened. The front door clicked. It didn't open fully, just unlocked. Keanu froze, and slowly, carefully, he walked toward it. He didn't open it. Instead, he reached into his bag and placed something on the doorstep. The blue sweater, the photograph, and the notebook. Open to the page where he had written, I never stopped believing in who you were before the lights. Before the cameras, before the world forgot your soul and only wanted your face. He stepped back, sat on the bench again, and waited for nearly an hour. Nothing happened. Then the door opened. Not fully, just enough for a hand to reach out, trembling. Careful, and take the sweater. Then the notebook. Then the door closed again. Keanu sat very still, his heart pounding, not from shock, but from something deeper. The curtain did not move again that night. But he didn't need it to, because now he knew for sure she was inside, and for the first time in 15 years. She had accepted a piece of her past. Maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something new. When memories knocked next day began with soft sunlight breaking through the clouds. After days of mist and cold, the warmth was quiet, like a memory returning on tiptoe. The stone path in front of Anna's house glistened from the night's rain. The front door remained closed, but the curtain no longer tried to hide what was behind it. Keanu Reeves sat on the bench outside, holding a cup of coffee. Someone from the cafe had quietly left for him. Across the street, Isabella waved from her window. He waved back with a small smile, the kind that held gratitude and hope all at once. But inside that house, Anna was awake too. She sat near the window, sweater wrapped around her shoulders. smelled like her mother. Her fingers trembled as she turned the pages of the notebook Keanu had left. Each word was a thread pulling her backward, toward a time when life was simpler, when dreams were small and pure, when love wasn't so distant or dangerous. Her eyes stopped at a line he had written. "You're not lost. You're just waiting for someone to remind you how to come home." She closed the notebook, placed it on the table, and stood. The house creaked beneath her steps, not because it was broken, but because it hadn't heard her walk through it in so many years. She paused at her old bedroom door. It still had the tiny sticker on the corner, the one shaped like a star. She used to pretend that door led to another world. Now it led to boxes. Silence. Anna opened the door anyway. Her old bed was gone. The room was empty, except for one thing, a painting on the floor, a half-finished self-portrait. Her younger face, her hair loose and eyes wide, stood unfinished, waiting for a hand that never came back to complete it. She stared at it for a long time. Outside, Keanu stood up. The front door was still closed, but something felt different. Then Clara appeared, walking up the road holding an envelope. "This was left at the cafe," Clara said, "addressed to you." Keanu took the envelope carefully. It was plain no name, just a simple heart drawn in the corner. Inside was a single photo. It showed Anna, much older than any public had seen her recently. She wasn't on a red carpet. She wasn't wearing makeup or styled by anyone. She sat on a bench with messy hair and tired eyes, holding a mug and looking out over a quiet lake. On the back was a handwritten message. "I took. It's the day after I walked away from everything. No lights, no people, no noise. I thought I'd finally found peace, but it wasn't peace. It was hiding. You didn't forget me. And maybe I don't want to forget me either." Beneath the message, one word was underlined. Keanu looked up at the house. For the first time, he felt something reach him from within it, not just a presence, but a welcome. He didn't knock. He simply sat back down. Hours passed. Then something impossible happened. The door opened. Anna stepped out. She wore the same blue sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. Her face was tired, not with age, but with years she had carried alone. The village froze. A few people across the street stared in stunned silence. Keanu stood slowly. He didn't rush toward her. He let her come to him. They stood only a few feet apart now. She looked at him, tears in her eyes, but her voice steady. "You waited," she said. Keanu nodded once. "I told you I would." Anna's eyes lowered. "Why?" He answered simply, "Because someone should have." They didn't hug, not yet. They just stood there, two people who had traveled different roads only to find the same moment. Around them, the village held its breath. Anna looked around. At the sky, the street, the lemon tree peeking from the side yard. This place. It's smaller than I remember. Keanu smiled gently. "That's because you grew. But the roots are still here." She wiped her eyes and laughed softly. The sound unfamiliar in her own ears. "Do you think they'll forgive me?" Keanu looked toward Clara, who stood nearby with glistening eyes and a warm nod. "They already have," said. Anna looked down at the notebook in her hands. "Maybe," she whispered. "I'm ready to write again." Keanu reached into his pocket and pulled out a pencil, old, worn down, but still whole. "Then start," he said. "Start with this moment." The weight of silence Seth next morning arrived with golden light. It poured through the clouds gently, touching rooftops and trees as if waking up a place that had been asleep far too long. Birds sang louder than usual. Even the wind seemed softer inside. The house Anna stood at the kitchen window. Her hands gripped a warm cup of tea, but her thoughts were far away. She had not stepped into this kitchen in 15 years. It smelled the same. Lemon oil, old wood, and faint dust. There were small scratches on the counter. She remembered making them as a child while pretending to cook. Her mother had laughed. Her father had scolded her lightly. and secretly given her an extra cookie. Anna closed her eyes. The memories weren't loud, and they were quiet, like ghosts walking beside her without needing to speak. Outside, Keanu was seated under the lemon tree. He wasn't reading, he wasn't writing. He was simply sitting, breathing, letting the silence hold him. That was the thing about him. He never rushed, never pushed, just stayed. Anna stepped outside after a while, walking slowly across the stone path. She sat beside him without saying anything. The silence between them was not empty. It was full of understanding. After a long while, she said, "I don't know how to face them." Keanu looked at her gently. "You already did," Anna shook her head. "No, I mean the world. The people who think they know me, the ones who said I disappeared because I was selfish, or broken, or finished." Keanu was quiet for a moment. Then he replied, "You don't owe them an explanation, but you owe yourself a new beginning." Anna's eyes welled with tears, but she held them back. "I thought fame would make me feel seen. Instead, it made me feel invisible. I lost track of who I was trying to please. Then I stopped trying. And when I stopped trying, they forgot me." Keanu nodded. "They didn't forget. They just never really knew you. The ones who matter, they're the ones who waited, or came back." Anna looked at him. "Like you." Keanu smiled softly. "Like me." She looked up at the lemon tree. "It still hasn't grown fruit." "No," Keanu said, "but it never gave up." They sat in silence again. Later that afternoon, Clara visited with a tray of food. She didn't speak much, just gave Anna a long hug, one that didn't ask anything in return. The other villagers slowly began to pass by, not to question, not to stare, just to leave little things on the doorstep. Flowers, letters, old photos. For each item, Anna wrote a quiet thank you note and placed it by the gate. By sunset, the pile had grown, so had something else her courage. Inside the shed, the painting still stood. Anna entered the shed for the first time since she left. She looked at her younger face on the canvas, still unfinished. The eyes were wide, full of hope. She picked up a brush. Keanu watched from a distance. Not saying a word, Anna didn't paint the face. Instead, she painted a second figure beside the first, someone sitting under a tree, holding a notebook, eyes calm, presence strong. It wasn't perfect, but it was true. As the stars began to appear, Anna stepped back outside. Keanu was still there, of course. "I painted something," she said. "Can I see it?" he asked. "Not yet," she replied. "But someday." He nodded. "I'll wait." She sat beside him again. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "What? Coming? You're waiting for me? All this?" Keanu shook his head. "No, because for the first time, I think you're finally coming back to yourself." Anna didn't reply right away, but her hands slowly reached out and rested on his. "Then maybe," she whispered, "it's time I show them who I really am." The girl who came back the morning of her first walk through the village was quiet. No cameras, no press, no reporters hiding behind corners. Just the soft echo of her own footsteps on cobblestone. Ana de Armas wore a simple coat and a scarf wrapped loosely around her neck. She wasn't dressed like someone famous. She was dressed like someone who used to live here and finally came back to remember what that meant. Keanu walked beside her, saying nothing, only offering his quiet presence, the way he always did, the way she had come to rely on. It's not because she needed saving, but because it helped to know someone saw her, truly saw her, without needing her to perform. As they reached the cafe, a hush fell over the tables outside. The few people who had doubted she would ever return now sat still, cups halfway to lips, eyes wide with something that wasn't judgment. It was wonder. Anna stepped forward and gently placed a folded letter on the community board beside the cafe. Window, pinned with a small clothespin, it had no envelope. Just her handwriting on the outside. To those I left behind, she turned to face the small crowd. "I don't want to disappear anymore," she said quietly. "But I don't want to be worshipped either. I just want to be known and maybe forgiven." A man in his 50s stepped forward. Anna recognized him. He had once sold fruit from a wooden cart at the corner. He smiled now and simply said, "Welcome home." Others nodded. Someone clapped. Not loudly, but gently, like they knew this moment wasn't for noise. It was for healing. Anna nodded and blinked back tears. She turned and walked slowly back toward her house with Keanu beside her. Halfway there, she stopped by the stone wall near the edge of the village, the same place she used to sit and watch the stars. "You know," she said, "I used to dream of the world from this spot. Now, I think the real dream is finding your way back after the world breaks you." Kiana looked at her. "You didn't break, you bent, you burned, but you didn't break." She smiled. "Thank you for waiting." He shook his head. "I wasn't waiting for you to be perfect. I was waiting for you to be ready." They sat on the wall together, no words needed. Just the wind, the sky, and a world that felt whole again in the following days. Anna began to do small things. She visited her old school, painted a mural on the wall with children from the village. She cooked with Clara and helped rebuild the collapsed garden fence. She didn't do interviews, didn't post about it online. Everything she did was quiet, real, and full of intention. She even started writing again, not scripts, not lines for others to speak, but her own story. A story about a girl who got lost, about fame and silence, and the long journey back to the place where her heart had once lived. She asked Keanu if he would read the first few pages. He read them slowly, eyes full of quiet emotion. "This is the best thing you've ever written," he said. Anna looked down. "I didn't know if I had anything left to say." "You did," he said. "You just needed space to say it." One evening, as the sky turned gold and the stars began to shine, Anna stood outside her childhood home. She looked at the open door behind her, the warm light spilling out, the laughter of neighbors drifting through the trees. She turned to Keanu. "You never asked me why I really left," she said. "I figured you'd tell me when you were ready." Anna nodded slowly. "I left because I thought I had to become someone else to matter. And when I couldn't hold that version of me anymore, I thought the world would stop caring. I was wrong." Keanu reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the same old pencil, short, worn down, but still usable. "Then maybe it's time to write the ending you deserve," he said. Anna took the pencil. They stood together beneath the stars, not as broken people, but as survivors of silence, doubt, and distance. And from that place, that quiet place of truth and return, Anna began her real story, not on stage, not in lights, but in the heart of a village that had never stopped waiting for her, and beside a man who never once let her forget that even the lost can find their way back.